Our second reading is taken from Luke's Gospel, chapter 12, beginning to read verse 13. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you?" Then he said to them, "Watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man produced a good crop. He thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "This is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of good things laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry." But God said to him, "You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you, and then you will get what you have prepared for yourself. This is how it will be with anyone who stores up things for himself, but is not rich towards God." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Lord, as we come to your word now, we pray that you would open our ears to hear what you have to say, open our eyes to see your glory, open our hearts to receive and know all that you have in store for us today. Amen. When I discovered that I was going to be doing services this morning, because Matt was poorly with COVID, I had looked and saw that it was harvest, and I thought, "Oh, that's good. I love harvest." It's one of my favourite times of the year, and we've always celebrated harvest. When we lived in London, celebrating an agricultural harvest with, sheaves of corn and all that stuff was complete nonsense. It was filled with animals, you know what I mean. But nonetheless, there was something basic, I think, about recognising the beauty of God's creation, all the provision that He gives to us, and wanting to just recognise that and say thank you to God for it. So I thought, well, what shall I preach about? And two things came to mind. Two major issues, I think, facing us as a society at the moment. One global and one more local, or at least the local expression of it. The first was climate change, and the second was our harvest offering this year, which is going to Sanctus at St Mark's. That's why I've got two readings, because I do want to cover both bits of that. They may not seem immediately connected, but I believe they both stem from God's generosity to us and our response to that generosity. As I say, I've always enjoyed harvest. We've always made a point of celebrating harvest. When the kids were small, we used to try to give some of our produce by not just giving some money, but by taking some of the stuff I grew in the garden and putting it in a basket and taking it to church and doing our part in the harvest offering. I'm not sure how much use was made of all that stuff that we grew, but nonetheless, the principle was there and we were saying thank you. And that principle of giving thanks for the harvest, even though harvest hasn't always been a church festival, the principle of giving thanks for the harvest, for God's people stopping to say thank you, is certainly biblical. There are many places in the Bible where it reminds us of the need to remember where the good things have come from and to give thanks for them. In Deuteronomy in particular, Moses gives both the practice, the theory, if you like, and the action of what we should do and why. And he said, when you collect it in your harvest, take some in a basket and take it and offer it to God in thanksgiving for all that He's given you. And he says the reason we need to do that is because if we don't acknowledge that this lot has come from God, we will end up thinking that I've got all this stuff because of how good I am. It's my intelligence, it's my strength, it's my skill that's given me all this. And those things may be true. It may be why your harvest is better than somebody else's, because you've got particular gifts and skills. But actually, at the root of it, everything we have comes from God anyway. I just said, know that it's God who gave you those abilities anyway. So however you want to phrase it, at the end of the day, God is the one who's responsible, He's the one who's provided, and you must stop to recognise that and acknowledge that and say thank you for it, otherwise you'll just get blown up in yourself and think it's all down to me. And it's easy to do that, and I think perhaps normal to do that, to think that our success is down to our skills or our intelligence or our hard work or our perseverance or our qualifications or whatever it might be. When clearly the ability to do those things is also one of God's gifts to us. And if like me you don't recognise that and stop to say thank you every day, and I guess most of us don't, most of the time we take it all for granted, it only makes what we're doing today even more important. That we should make space regularly and specifically to stop and remember and recognise and say thank you to God for all He's given to us. So having made that point, what do we learn from our readings today? Well, I chose Genesis 1 because for me clearly it speaks of God's provision, God's great provision. It's such a long passage, which is why I use the children's version. But I think actually the children's version, although the Bible version is the best version, because it's very clear what's happened. It goes on a bit. Basically what it says is made all these things each according to their kind, but it says it umpteen times. And I think that children's version from the Storyteller Bible picks up something of the excitement and the beauty and the spontaneity and the abundance of God's provision that's perhaps missing from what can be quite dry words at the beginning of Genesis. Sorry if that's offended anybody using that particular view on the Bible. Clearly that passage speaks of God's provision. It starts with nothing. There was just nothing. And God brings into being all that makes life possible, all that makes life sustainable, enjoyable, beautiful. Everything that life is came into being at God's behest. It was a gift to His creation, a gift to us. And those things clearly weren't given to any of us as individuals. It's more that as part of the creation, we belong to them rather than they belong to us. And we are supported and enabled by them. Without them, we and the whole of creation, without God's will, God's blessing, God's gifts, everything simply ceases to exist. And those gifts cover absolutely everything we have, everything we are. And they declare, for me, God's love and care and provision, just given freely to us all. So having given us all this, even life itself, God asks one thing of us. After He's created man and woman, He says, be fruitful and increase. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and birds of the air and over every living creature. Well, I know this isn't new thinking, but if we look around us in the world today, it seems to me that at least we misunderstood that, or we lost our way, or perhaps we've totally forgotten that that's what we're supposed to be doing, or worse still, that we know that's what we're supposed to be doing and we simply ignored it. It seems that we've taken exploit, subdue to mean exploit. It seems that we've taken rule over to mean it's yours to do exactly whatever you want to. And we know that's not the case if we stop to think about it. The problem seems to be that as a race, we don't stop to think. And we just use what the earth has to supply for our own needs whenever we want, in whatever way we want. When we read subdue, actually that means stop the chaos. Stop it all turning into chaos. Where you see chaos, bang it down. Bring back peace and order. Make sure things are properly organised so that things work well as they should. You subdue a ruling tribe or whatever. You bring them back down so that you can have order again. And when you give somebody the responsibility of ruling over, it's not to say those people and that dominion is yours, you can do exactly what you like with it now. The prime responsibility of a ruler is to care for and provide for and protect that which he rules over or she rules over. It's not exploited and do anything like with it. That may be what happens, more often than not, but it's not what rule over is supposed to be about. It's not too late. We know that there are things we can do that will help to deal with the issue of climate change among us. And as God's people, we believe, we know, that actually God's still in control at the end of the day. And that in the end he will have his way, and he will bring his creation to his planned conclusion for it. But we still have a responsibility to play our part, to subdue the chaos that we see, to rule over God's creation in a way that means care for it, look after its well-being, not just exploit it. So what do? We can't change the world on our own. That's only too clear. We can't turn the clock back. But we can play our part. We can support and encourage those in authority who are trying to make a difference. We can challenge where we see those in authority and those who have the power to make a difference ducking the issue and simply continuing the exploitation of the pollution. We can pray for the leaders of the nations as they gather at COP26 up in Glasgow at the end of the month, that they will come with a fresh commitment to doing something that will actually make a difference, not just find some in words, but some concrete actions, and then give them the firm resolve to get on and do those actions, see them through. And we can do our bit too. It's not easy, but the reality is we all still need to make changes to our lifestyle, to reduce our carbon footprint, to stop further pollution. We can't change the world, but we can change ourselves, and we can make a difference where we are. And it's time that as God's people in particular, we started trying to do that, perhaps more effectively than we had in the past. I speak for myself. You're already much better than I am at it, bless you. Help me understand how you've done that. So if all that's about the bigger picture, the planetary scale of things, what about the issues, the other ordinary, everyday issues facing people around us today? Well, we're here to acknowledge God's provision, to give thanks for all his blessings. But as we do that, as we look around ourselves and wonder all this stuff God's given us, it's so easy to be selfish, to see it as ours, given to us to make us more comfortable, just like the rich fool in that reading from the Gospel. He was certainly rejoicing in the blessings that God had poured out on him, but his mind didn't move beyond himself. His immediate question is not what should I do with all this blessing, but how can I hang on to it? How can I make sure that I preserve it and keep it for myself? That's not explicitly said, but it's clear from what the story covers. And it's clear too that the implication is you shouldn't be storing this up for yourself, you should be sharing it. And that principle of sharing the blessings that God gives us was very much part of the culture at that time. Very much usual for that culture. It still is in many parts of the world. It's something we miss out of. And if you go to, I'm sure Afghanistan is just like the places I visited in Africa. They had nothing, and yet they shared it with you. And I went to Tanzania, I remember I went to the Department Church service on a Sunday, and we had lunch with the pastor and his family afterwards. And when we came away, I said to the chap who was with us, the Tanzania chap who was with us, was that their resupply of food? He said, yeah, probably. That sharing with strangers and foreigners and the community with whoever's around, loving them like you love yourself, was part of their culture. So putting extra grain in the barn, or in our case putting extra money in the bank, or simply using it on our own comfort and security, clearly misses that principle of sharing and caring by a mile. As a country, as a society, it's clear that though some have enough and to spare, and that we are able to live comfortably, even if we're facing shortages and price rises and all that fill us with dread, there are many here at home and around the world who face much greater hardship. There are many where I'm worried about possibility of energy prices doubling. I've got the money to pay for it, actually. What about those who have just lost their £20 off the universal credit and are facing those price increases with their young family to care for and feed and school and clothes and all the rest of it? It is possible to enjoy God's blessings and to help people in need, I believe, if we're willing to trust God and share the blessings He's given us, trusting that He won't let us suffer because of that, or at least suffer unnecessarily because of that. And we can do that both by personal giving and by standing up for the voiceless, the homeless, the refugees, the hungry. I really struggle with being part of a nation. It's got nothing to do with political parties. I struggle with being part of a nation who, faced with a high bill for getting us through COVID, says we'll make the very poorest people in the world pay for this. We'll reduce foreign aid. I just fail to comprehend how that can clear the right thinking. I know it can be difficult, but we've got infinitely more money than they're ever going to have. We don't make the poorest suffer so that we can live in more comfort. I struggle with being part of a country that treats refugees and asylum seekers the way that we do. People who have got to the point of absolute desperation at home, that they've left that and risked all sorts of dangers, to find their way looking for a better life, somewhere that will just give them basic minimums of life, a job where they can look after themselves, feed their families, and have somewhere safe and secure to live. Surely as God's people, we must look out for that with compassion and do something about it. And I'm glad to say that we're part of a church that doesn't shy away from that. And we do give regularly to a number of different charities, working with all sorts of people in need, such as Masoi. I found out at the AGM from Masoi yesterday that in this last year, when we've all faced COVID and all sorts of problems and we're not able to gather and everybody's been struggling because they can't get on and do their normal jobs and all that, with all the problems that we're facing. Last year, Masoi Trust raised more money than we ever had before. And we're able to send that out to Masoi in Africa, where other charities have simply stopped giving because it's too difficult. And we've been part of that as a church. We've been a good part of that, and I'm really grateful for all that we've been able to do. We're part of a church that supports food banks at home, that are reaching out to those in need around us, that are giving out their time to go and run a uniform bank, charging 50p an item so that people don't have to spend all that money on uniforms. There are many ways that we can make a difference. And today we have the opportunity to give specifically to those refugees, those asylum seekers, those who have left everything to escape war and persecution and come to our country seeking to find a better life. We can give our offering this year, as you'll know, is going to Sanctus at St Mark's, and they do some wonderful work with asylum seekers and refugees around Stoke. So when we come to give, and we're going to take the basket up, I know we don't normally do that, but I thought the harvest service we need to make the point of, this is an offering we give to God. It's not simply going to Sanctus. We're doing this because it's what we should be doing to God, and God is helping us to share it with them. So as we celebrate and thank God for his blessings and harvest, let's acknowledge all he's given to us. Let's play our part in both those areas that we've thought about today. Let's confess our failure to care for the planet. Let's pray for those in authority as they seek the changes and commit themselves to making, and commit ourselves to making changes in our lives. And let's be as generous as we can in our offering to Sanctus, for those who are struggling through a very difficult stage of their lives can find help, can find hope, find the encouragement they need, and can see God's love in action through God's people.